So we're 10 episodes in now, and I would normally think that it's a little bit late to start introducing characters, but here we are, and I already kind of like I like one of them. With that said, hello everybody, welcome back to our weekly Misfit of Demon King Academy video. Today we're here to talk all about episode 10, Inter-Academy Exams, but before we get into it, quick reminder, if you haven't done so yet, to hit that sub button, and if you already did, then hit that join button, if you feel like it. That one's more than if you feel like it, but the sub button, yeah, hit the sub button. Without further ado though, let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so, as I said, we have two new characters who get introduced this week, one of whom is sort of like offhandedly introduced, and the other one is more engaging and a little bit more interesting, and that one in particular is Rivist Aine, or Aine. I'm going to say Aine. Rivist Aine. And Rivist is the character that I actually really dug this week. I normally would go like really in depth on the character designs, but with Misfit, normally you just kind of have like the hair and the eye color, and then like just a sort of general demeanor in regards to everything else. We can sort of go off how they dress themselves up, which I normally would do, but Crunchyroll crashed on me as I was writing the script, so I couldn't really analyze something that I can't see. I mean, I can go off memory, and what I remember is that Rivist's outfit, from what I gathered, was pretty much like casual, or not casual, but it was pretty much like the norm across the board. So we know that Rivist at the very least cares about the academy a great deal, otherwise he would let his uniform just sort of be baggy. His uniform's really well kept up, which we appreciate. We appreciate little visual nods to how the character feels about other aspects of their life. Clearly, if the character cares about their uniform, it means they care about the Demon King, the Demon Academy, right? Likewise, we see that this boy has some shaggy brown hair, vaguely Scott Pilgrim-ish. And the fact that he had Scott Pilgrim hair immediately made me want to trust him, because it's like, well, I don't necessarily trust Scott Pilgrim, but I like Scott Pilgrim. So I was right away like, okay, he kind of looks like Scott, right? He looks like Scott, but he has these yellow eyes. Now, yellow as a color is sort of a double-edged sword, right? Because we like yellow, but people actually, like, if you put somebody in a yellow room, they can tend to feel anxious. Something about yellow is interesting. It's probably one of the more interesting colors, since it sort of brings out different, like, seemingly two different feelings, right? You do get kind of happy when you see yellow, but if you're surrounded by too much yellow, it can make you anxious. In fact, there's a study that shows that it actually makes babies cry, which is like, whoa. So what I'm trying to say is that if Rivist actually stared at an infant, he would make it cry just by looking at it. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that Rivist's eyes are sort of a double-edged sword in terms of his character, right? Because when I saw him, at first I'm like, yellow eyes means caution, which means this dude's up to some shenanigans, but the hair and the general way he carried himself, especially towards our boy Voldi, sort of made me want to almost trust him. Yellow can also be a very perceptive color, right? It's a piercing color. So it could be that this dude is trying to pierce through Voldi's whole demeanor, trying to suss out if he truly is who he says he is, and he doesn't quite believe him, right? Yellow can also mean, in a little bit ironically, it can mean success, which, in fairness, like, yeah, from what we gather about Rivist, he is successful. He's a third year. Voldi and the gang are first years. So at the very least, Rivist, as a third year in the Demon Academy, has shown to be quite apt. He is a successful student, especially as we see his relationship with the teacher, who is great, by the way. And I kind of low-key ship it, which makes me uncomfortable, but it is what it is. Okay, maybe I don't ship it. It's just that I like their dynamic quite a bit. I like that she's like there for him. It's cool. It's definitely different than Emilia-sama, who we knew previously. This teacher is really great. I really, really like this teacher a whole bunch in her dynamic with Rivist. I should have given her a full character analysis, but maybe we'll do that next week. If you guys want it, let me know, and we can dig into her character a bit next week. But yeah, in terms of Rivist, I think the yellow eyes it does sort of indicate that he's perceptive, but maybe to be a little bit cautious around him. You don't quite get a real good read on his character. And his character is genuinely the most interesting thing about this episode for me. I love a complex character where, like, they're like in terms of like, are they a good guy? Are they bad guy? They're sort of in between, and that's sort of where Rivas sits. Like, is he for Voldi? Is he against Voldi? Well, he doesn't like Voldi, but he's not exactly standing against him either. You know what I mean? I like those morally gray type of characters. He actually reminded me an awful lot of a certain other anime character, but we'll get into that a bit more once we start talking about the class divide between the demons, as well as the divide between the heroes and demons. But speaking of the heroes, we gotta talk a little bit about the other character introduced this week. We gotta talk about Heine. Yes, that's his name, or Heine. Sorry, not Heine, but that's absolutely his nickname. Heine Canon Jorg, which is apparently his name. I had to look up the character's name on Wiki. Don't worry, I didn't read any spoilers. I just typed in like Demon King Academy, looked up the character list. There he was. So Heine Canon Jorg. I love that name. Jorg. And my boy be rocking this cream hair, which I'm like, okay, cream? Like, was somebody going for blonde and just did a bad dye job? That's kind of what it looks like a little bit. He has hazel eyes, which, like, hazel as a color, like, in terms of eye color, it's sort of seen as, like, sort of, like, the most calming, you know? Like, it's sort of, like, the collection of all the other eye colors. You're sort of, like, you're unifying them. You're everything that brown eyes are, but a little bit stronger, a little bit brighter, right? I don't quite see that here. I'd say that in terms of eye color, the thing that I can sort of parse from the character, if we're going off Hazel being a shade of brown, my best guess would be that the character is a bit predictable. I have a feeling Heine over here is a bit predictable in his, shall we say, not even angsty, shall we say bratty attitude. It seems like you can kind of read this character like a book. So actually the hazel eyes might be totally appropriate, given that brown is typically seen as a kind of predictable color. So I do think, yeah, that makes a hell of a lot of sense. I do gotta say, even though we get very little from the character, his design, just like this short, cocky attitude and what we see from him from the episode, he is exactly what I imagined he'd be once we saw like that first shot of him. He's a cocky character, vaguely similar to Canon. He looks the most like Canon of the reincarnations that we've met from the Hero Academy. I would argue that a certain somebody else from the Demon King Academy looks a little bit closer. But yeah, he's vaguely the most Canon-ish. Like, he kind of has the hair. Although Canon's hair wasn't cream, but it doesn't matter. Like, of the two characters, like I said, this week they get introduced. One of them I didn't really like, and as much as I think the attitude is perfectly displayed, like the way he sort of holds like one fist on his hip and then the other one sort of like looking down, cocky, even though he's a short character. First of all, that's always fun. Like the short character who looks down at you, like that's always a fun character type. But we don't really get a whole lot with Heine. So unfortunately, I can't really tell you too much other than like, and because the design's not that great. Like, the design's not perfect. I do like it, as I said, there's aspects to it that I like, but in general, I think of the designs we've seen so far, and keep in mind, the show has some great designs. Of the designs we've seen so far, this might be my least favorite, but I do think it fits for the character. But enough about characters, we gotta talk a little bit about the growing tension between both the classes and the races, which is vaguely apt for today's times. But the Royals tend to believe that Voldi cheated getting to the Hero Academy, which is like, how, right? Because they're like, you must have cheated to get here. It's like, you were told to get there by any means necessary, and they teleported. That's not cheating. You know what I mean? I'm like, how is that cheat? What? Like, and even if that's not necessarily what they were talking about, like, how in what? Like, I was just like, what? Right? Like, that was my initial reaction. And I could, like, at first I thought Rivist was going to be this sort of throwaway character, but then I realized, like, oh no, he has a proper design. So something must be up with him. And he did seem dodgy at first. Like I said earlier, like, at first I was like, ooh, yellow, caution. Okay, so he's up to something. But at the same time, the way that he was just like, well, I may have misjudged that. I'm sorry, but I still don't trust you. And he sort of saunters off. And I'm like, okay, he's a bit dodgy, but I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. And as we see throughout the rest of the episode, he's easily the most interesting part of the episode. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's a shippy thing that happens at some point, and we'll get to it. That's pretty great, but I think Rivest might be my favorite part of the episode. Still, it's interesting to see how the Royals still just don't like Voldi. Like, we see this even further emphasized when the Hero Academy and the Demon Academy are invited to put on a performance, basically to show off how their different magics are used, right? So the heroes show off their magics, and it can basically make a holy sword out of like a broken sword. So it's like, oh, that's cool. So you can like strengthen and repair shit. That's really interesting. And Rivest is brought up to show off demon magic, and he attempts to turn this rat into like a big overpowered monster, right? But it doesn't work, because this is where we get the other part of the tension, that being, it's not just tension between the different classes of demons, but also tension between the heroes and the demons. Like, just these two separate races just do not like each other, right? So we get this sort of tension there. And Voldi is quick to point out, like, they're fixing this. Like they're trying, like, they're rigging this whole thing. Like, their magic is blocking Rivest's. And by the way, this is how you do your magic. And he, like, basically does their magic, like, creates a holy sword himself. And they're like, wait, whoa, what? He's like, oh, by the way, this is how you break that. And he breaks it and then creates, like, does the spell that Rivest was trying to do. I couldn't quite tell if Rivest, like, if after Voldi broke the like, rigged spell, like, after Voldi blocked their block, if Rivest's rat, like, transformed based off Rivest's power, or if that was Voldi's power. I couldn't quite tell, but regardless, Voldi also makes another monster just to show off that he can do that shit. So even if that was Rivest's power, Voldi also makes another one just to show off, like, hey, we're badass, don't screw with the demons. But then you'd expect Rivest to be like, oh, thanks, man, like, thanks for having my back. But he's more embarrassed, which, like, at first I was like, what, that's stupid. But then I kind of get it, right? Because he's just been embarrassed in front of his in front of the heroes, and now he feels like he's been embarrassed in front of the demons as well, because Voldi showed him up, right? Because don't forget, he's a misfit, right? He's a half-blood. He's the half-blood prince, as it were. And they don't like that, like, right? Because, like, he's a royalist, they don't like that stuff, which is stupid, right? We already agreed that, like, the royalists are bad for basically being racist. So yeah, I do think that Rivest as a character decision is being a dick. But at the same time, like, it makes sense given how Rivest is grown in this society, right? Like, in terms of the narrative, like, yeah, no, it makes total sense. Rivest is genuinely really interesting in the way that he's sort of like, even though you helped me, I didn't ask for your damn help, right? And that gets even further emphasized a little bit later when we get to the heroes versus the heroes, like, versus the demons in this underwater city, which was legit cool. Like, I actually would have liked to have seen more of the exam. It was legitimately pretty interesting looking, and we get more of the history between the teacher and Rivest, right? Teach and Rivest actually have, like, an interesting backstory where she is trying to help him gain better control over his magic. And he says that he's having a hard time with magics that are used specifically to attack because he doesn't want to hurt people. And she actually says it as he's saying it. And when they both sort of, like, do, like, the jinx thing, they don't do that, although I wish they did. She says, like, I have a feeling it was the same way with the founding ancestor. They're talking clearly about Avos Delhivia, but we know that truly it's Anos Voldigord. But they still sort of imply that they're talking about the version of him that Voldi turned out to be, right? This dude who doesn't necessarily want to hurt people as much as he wants to protect people, as much as he's trying to secure safety for demons. Like, that's how that started. At least that's like the vibe that I've gotten from Voldi, is that he never really wanted to bring tyranny, even though that is, like, in his name. I think it's more implied that he sort of wanted to protect people, and you really get that from Rivest as well, which sort of made me want to root for him, especially during this. Like, heroes are always good, except in this case they're not. But, like, I wanted to root more for Rivest in this case. And honestly, I found myself, like, legit being upset that he gets tricked. Because, yeah, the heroes basically trick them. The Hero Academy sets it up so that the demons are screwed, essentially, like, during this underwater exam. And in hindsight, like, I probably should have seen this coming. And, like, let me know if you guys did, because I didn't even connect what was happening until they explained. I'm like, oh, yeah, I probably should have seen that coming. And it's the idea that underwater they have these, like, these machines basically that are pumping out holy water into the lake. And holy water obviously is going to be pretty toxic to demons, but it also boosts the hero's power. So as much as they try, the demons are going to be at a disadvantage, and their magic downright doesn't even work half the time. It leads to a really, really great moment with Voldi and Rivist, actually. Like, after Rivist and his in the third years get like knocked out, Rivist basically like begs Voldi to whoop the hero's ass, which Voldi is willing to oblige, drying up the entire lake with like a sun. Basically summons a sun, like he straight up summons a star essentially, and dunks it into the lake and dries the bitch up. But yeah, that's insane. But yeah, Rivist basically requests that Voldi take the heroes down. In a scene that, as I said, I was going to compare Rivist to another anime character, in a scene that was strikingly similar, at least to me, of Vegeta and Goku at the tail end of the Namek saga, right? Where I'm like, this is very much like, you're the last of our kind, Kakarot. Only, like, they're not the last of their kind. It's more of just like, avenge us, Kakarot. You know what I mean? Like, it's that part. And I was like, man, Rivist kinda is Vegeta. Like he does kind of have some Vegeta tendencies, only Vegeta was like a dickhead for most of the beginning of Dragon Ball Z. Whereas Rivist, we at least understand why he's doing the things he's doing and why he is so against Voldi saying that he's the Demon King, because to Rivist that's blasphemy, because he so idolizes the Demon King, right? So he just doesn't see him like that. So he's like, until we get to a point where the two of them maybe team up, I don't think Rivist will really be on Voldi's side. He even says, like, as he's healing him, like, I downright hate every bone in your body. Like, I hate you with every bone in my body. Like, I can't stand you. But I need you to avenge what just happened here. And to their credit, I don't really think that the reincarnated spirits of, like the reincarnated versions of canon necessarily want to be cheating. Like, they're certainly going to allow it, right? Because it lets them, like, be badass and cool. But when they get caught and Voldi like dries up the water and says like, okay, now let's go for real, right? They don't say like, no. Their teacher tries to be like, no, like I'm calling this off. But the reincarnated versions of canon are like, no, we'll play, like we'll do this, we'll dance, right? Like, you want to dance? Well, let's dance, right? So it's like, okay, like I at least appreciate that like some part of them is canon. Like, some part of them is like a just hero, but they've sort of been corrupted over time by whatever weirdness is going on. That said, the canon characters are still using our girl, which is a little messed up. They basically have her like locked up in like inside one of like the city thing, like the inside one of those structures, which is messed up. So they're not exactly acting like exactly like canon. If anything, I'd say the character acting the most like canon so far has been Ray. And speaking of Ray, I want to talk about this before we wrap up the video here. Ray and Missy get to be friggin' adorable. It's the cutest friggin' thing. Ray and Missy are basically, you know, like everybody's sort of out and about. They're at this fair at the hero city, like at the human city, sorry. And they're testing out some games. They're having fun, blah blah blah. And that's when Sasha can't help but spy across the way. She's like, oh hey, look, it's Ray and Missy. I wonder what they're up to. And Voldi's like, oh yeah, let's go say hi. And Sasha's like, are you stupid? Like immediately she's like, what are you doing? Like, no, let them be, right? Like, let them have their moment. And so Ray and Missy have this cute ass little moment where like basically Ray and Missy just sort of share compliments, you know, like they're just being cute as shit. They're playing like an archery game. So again, like they're playing carnival games almost, you know, like you can imagine like instead of an archery thing, if they were playing the baseball thing, you know, like it's super, super cute. I really, really dig it. And Ray basically like gets like a easy shot, right? But he gets like a bullseye, but instead of being like celebratory, he can't help it. Like his attention is like focused on Missy. And he notices that our girl is sort of like uncomfortable, right? And he's like, oh, you must not like fairs, eh? Like, we can leave if you want. And she's like, no, like, don't worry about it. I'm like, this is so goddamn cute. This is so cute. Oh my god, this is new ship of the show. Like, this is the cutest friggin' thing. Like, this is my new favorite ship. This is my OTP, right? I'm like, this is my OTP for the show. This is adorable as hell. And I like that the trio is even looking on like, oh shit, right? Like when you see them spying, it's so fun. Like them being like, oh shit, okay, get it, Ray, get it, right? It's fun as hell. And interesting to note, not Voldi, Ray wins this little like necklace, right? This seashell necklace that is like, that's you sort of like, it's like a matching seashell necklace. You've probably seen these before. They're like those couple necklaces where it's like one half and then you put them together and they make one whole, right? So it's like a seashell thing. And Voldi remarks later, once like they're talking about it later, that it's actually from an old tale about two humans who were like near the end of their life cycle or something was happening. I don't quite remember for certain. But they were basically near the end and they broke a shell in two for both of them to carry and reunite in their next life. Reincarnated humans. Y'all, I went from like being like, I'm like 70% sure now that Ray might be canon. I'm like 90% sure. Like I'm like 90% positive he's canon. I saw some people say like it doesn't make any sense because like he's a demon. Canon was a hero. Like Canon was a human, right? He was a human being. How would he reincarnate into a demon? Did we forget what happened to Amelia? did we forget that's a thing that can happen? No, I'm like pretty much. I thought it was gonna be Shin. Like I thought he was Shin, cause like, and that's really goddamn clever of the show, by the way. It's really, really clever of them to put the scene with Shin in the same episode as they're introducing Ray to make you think that it's Shin. But I see you now, show. I see you. I'm like 90% sure that he's canon now. So clever. This show is, listen, man, like, is it like a fun power trip fantasy that like is just sort of like trashy fun? Yes. But god damn, is it ever trying to be clever? And it absolutely is clever when it feels like it. There's also some stuff that happens with Ivis. Ivis basically finds out about a legend that says that the hero canon will push back the dark with a sword that basically, like the sword the sword of evil's bane, right? The master sword, but it's like a sword specifically designed to kill Voldi. More of the same, basically. Like we kind of knew that people like we knew that like if there was reincarnated versions of canon, there's probably going to be like some like clash between him and Voldi at some point. So it's not like new, but I thought I should mention it because I feel like people are going to be like, well, you forgot to mention the Ivis thing. No, it's not the Ivis thing. I just don't have as much to say about it. It's like, that's a wait and see, but I do appreciate that Ivis is concerned for his boy, but I'm not. I feel like nothing could touch Voldi at this point. But with that said, everybody, I'm gonna wrap up my thoughts here. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, then don't forget to boop that up snoot and share if you care. And of course, as always, I have to give a big thank you to the good folks in the T Squadron. Look at these beautiful people. Look at all of these beautiful names. And hey, if you would like to join these beautiful people, then there are now 2 ways to do so. The first is by checking out that first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, and the second, for just a little bit more, is hitting that join button right beside the sub button, which gets you a nifty badge next to your name in the comments and premieres, and emotes to spam in said premieres. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, go ahead and hit that join button. So once again, a big thank you to the T Squadron. Y'all are the true MVPs. I appreciate you guys so much. And yeah, that's it for me. So I'm gonna go make myself a cup of tea. And until next time, you stay classy, AniTube, and wash your dang hands.